there's nothing to be afraid of with ANSI. You know, the ANSI police are not going to show up at your house. Nobody, because you're 2 inches different from somebody else, they're not going to turn you over to the appraisal board.
Originating from deep inside the Rocky Mountains, transported through the power of the internet, and arriving inside your tiny earbuds. It's the Appraiser Coach Podcast, helping appraisers increase their efficiency, quality, and make more money. Here's the guy who makes it his life's mission to create value for real estate appraisers nationwide. Your host and the Appraiser Coach, Dustin Harris.
And welcome back to the program, everybody. Dustin Harris hanging out once again in the podcast chair. Can't wait to introduce you to my wonderful guest coming up. But first, want to pause, remind you that we're sponsored by 3 great companies. One of them, Working RE Magazine. That's where I go to find out what's going on in the industry. We're going to be talking about what's going on in the industry today, but you can always learn what's going on at workingre.com. Workingre.com. Datamaster is saving appraisers time, saving appraisers money. Check them out. Go to datamasterusa.com. Once again, datamasterusa.com. And of course, Alamode. I was on the phone with Alamode this morning, little tech support issue going on. Expert people helping me solve problems. That's why I stay with Alamode. Check them out. Go to alamode.com, or you can call them at 800-ALAMODE. Well, folks, I can't wait to introduce you to a friend of mine. First time on the program. His name is Hamp Thomas. You probably know him. Hamp, welcome to the program, my friend.
All right, Dustin, I'm glad to see you. Thanks for having me talk about my favorite subject.
I can't wait to dive in here. You know, you've kind of been the go-to guy. You know, when people say ANSI, I think Hamp. I really do. That's not a joke. I mean, you're kind of the go-to guy for ANSI for a lot of different years, for many, many years. I would like to introduce you, though, with your official bio. You are the founder and president of the Institute of Housing Technologies. You're also the president of the Carolina Appraisers in Real Estate, leading expert on residential square footage and its influence on home valuation process. You're an instructor, an appraiser, a realtor, an author, an all-around good guy. You're probably most people, if you go to Amazon, folks, and you type in Hamp Thomas, that's H-A-M-P Thomas, you'll find all kinds of books. Of course, your leading book, your leading textbook right now is going to be Measuring Square Footage with ANSI 2021. It's been updated, home measuring textbook. Give us some background, Hamp. How did you get into this whole ANSI thing?
Yeah, I'm just old. That's why I have a lot of products. But I mean, really, I worked as a realtor for 10 years. And this guy kept telling me, you got to get into appraising. So I finally did. And I mean, like months after I became an appraiser, it was obvious. You know, I could see the differences in the MLS and the tax records and what the appraisals did. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is so simple. You know, I'm going to tell everybody I know. And I thought, heck, you know, they might even be happy to learn this stuff. And I was wrong. You know, Everybody said, don't open that can of worms. And pretty much there were like 3 people that kind of laughed about it and said, you will never do 2 things. You'll never get a realtor to go back to measuring houses, because they did used to, and you'll never get an appraiser to follow, or all appraisers to follow the same standard. So somebody told me I couldn't do it. And so the next 20 years I tried to do it. That's what I've been doing.
Yeah. Well, and there's going to be some changes coming up that are going to kind of force that hand a little bit. I want to talk about in a bit, but I want to go back to what you said earlier, because I grew up in a real estate home. My dad was a real estate broker, eventually became an appraiser, and of course that trickled down to me. But I remember as a real estate agent, before he was even a broker, him out with his wheel, walking along the side of the house. Talk to us about that. You know, you said they used to measure, and you're right, they did used to measure. What happened?
Yeah, oh yeah, and I mean, really, the realtor organization, like in 1908, they started that because they knew the information in tax records was not accurate. Yeah. But when I was, you know, I grew up and my parents were in the real estate business as well, and the kids were the cheap labor. So we did the measuring wheels. But realtors always, you know, used to, part of that fee structure included measuring the house. And you might not have done it perfect, but you had a sketch in every file, and you always did it before you ever even thought about doing a CMA.
Yeah. It's interesting now. They just trust that data. I had John List, the CEO of True Footage, on the program here a few weeks ago, and he got his start. You know, the whole idea of the company name True Footage started with this concern that most of the houses, and I can't remember the numbers he gave, but it was a huge amount. I mean, a huge amount of homes were, you know, when they're being reported, whether it be tax records or MLS or what have you, are just flat out wrong.
Yeah. I mean, it's a little frightening. And actually, I probably spent like 4 years, I'm hard to believe it was that long, but looking at what the problems in tax records cause. And I even concluded that if the tax departments would use the accurate square footage and nothing else changed, they could increase their revenues like 3 to 4%. That doesn't sound like a lot, but that's annual revenue, 3 to 4% on just using the right information.
Okay, so we keep, let's step back just a second and set the groundwork here, because we keep using this term ANSI. I assume most appraisers are aware of what we're talking about. This is an acronym, right? ANSI. What is it?
The American National Standards Institute. And really, I mean, ANSI does thousands and thousands of standards. You know, they are the go-to company and they create standards for industries. But I mean, if you look up ANSI, they have a standard for any and everything you can imagine.
So it's not just square footage. You're talking about measurements, weights, balances, all of this stuff. And when it comes to square footage, they're not the only game in town, right? There's other institutes, if you will, or other standards that one could abide by.
Yeah, and there are a couple of other standards, and even Fannie Mae considered some of the other standards. But ANSI, if you ask people, you know, what measurement standard do you know, or you say the name ANSI, people know that name. And they chose it because of people have the name recognition, and also because it is relatively short. You know, it's small and it's easy. You know, 16 pages is the total, so people can kind of grasp that easier, and they hope that that would help people to be more comfortable with it anyway. But they looked at all the other standards.
So you've mentioned Fannie Mae several times here, and I know that you're in pretty high demand lately. As of this recording, we're about mid-March of 2022, hoping to get this out before an April 1st deadline. What's going on April 1st? Why are we talking about Fannie Mae?
Yeah, and the date has made for a lot of conversation, but I mean, officially as of April 1st, 2022, Fannie Mae mandates the ANSI measurement standard, you know, for all residential appraisals. And, you know, it's going to change a lot of things. And the thing, and first off, the date, it's not an April Fool's joke. You know, a lot of people have talked about that. Yeah. There's no ulterior motive with the date on there. And it really, they just picked a date, but they tried to give people enough time, you know, to either take a course, read a book, whatever they were going to do. But they also understand there's no easy way to do this. And, you know, if we gave people 2 years, it still wouldn't be enough time to iron out all the problems. We're going to have to jump in this, you know, and kind of figure it out as we go. And appraisers are the square footage experts. So this is the logical place to start.
Let's talk about that for just a second, about, you know, not necessarily about being an expert, because you can, you know, you can see me, you know, I'm not an expert, but I'll pretend all day long. Why is Fannie going to a standard? What's the purpose of going to a standard in your mind?
Yeah, I mean, it's nothing new. They've been looking at this stuff for a long time. And of course, anybody that wants to see the errors in square footage, all you got to do is look at tax records, MLS, and appraisal numbers, you know, and the differences are pretty easy. But what they would recognize is over the period of time, they would have like 3 appraisers do the same house. They would all come up with different square footage totals. And a lot of times that difference would be like more than 10%. You know, and when they start to see the differences be so much of a difference that it changes home value, they figured, you know, somebody has to take the plunge, and who to do it. Nobody wanted to take that first step. And they're getting a lot of heat for this. They really are. You know, people want them to stop it or delay it or something. But, you know, I say kudos to Fannie Mae for having the guts to do this. You know, they knew there was a problem, and this is probably the best answer to fix it. And they took the first step.
We're talking with Hamp Thomas. He is the author of Measuring Square Footage with ANSI, ANSI 2021. When we get back, Hamp, I want to talk a little bit more about this upcoming deadline and maybe some of the things that appraisers are dealing with and some of the pitfalls between now and then. But first, I want to pause here and remind everybody we're sponsored by a la mode. Folks, speaking of sketching, for many years, I've been using a la mode and their mobile devices in the field. Now, they don't create the devices, but they create the software that goes on the devices, your smartphone, your iPad, your Android device. Folks, to be able to measure and be able to put it right in the report that will transfer back, that you don't have to remeasure or resketch when you get back to the office. Absolutely genius. What a time saver. Alamode.com is where you find out more, or 800 Alamode. Speaking of saving time, I've timed it, folks, about 40 minutes on average in our office. 40 minutes is what you are saved when you use DataMaster. DataMaster will take the data that you would put in your report anyway. There's a little bit of confusion out there. Was DataMaster going to choose my data? No, you still are the analyst. You still are the decision maker. It simply makes it easier because it takes it from one screen, puts it in another, absolutely at the touch of a button. Check them out. Go to datamasterusa.com, datamasterusa.com. Finally, we're sponsored by Working RE Magazine. Folks, just this morning, got a email from Working RE Magazine, a little bit of an update on what's going on in the world of appraising. Folks, if you want to keep up on what's going on in your chosen career, there is no better place than Working RE Magazine. All you have to do is go to the website. It's workingre.com, type in your email address when a little box pops up and asks for it, and voila, you get the free newsletter. Comes out on a regular basis. Great information. Again, it's workingre.com. All right, folks, welcome back to the program. We are talking with a good friend of mine, Mr. Hamp Thomas. Hamp, welcome back.
Thank you.
It is great to have you. So the deadline is fast approaching, April 1, 2022. This scares a lot of folks. Many appraisers are not ready, or they think they are. How many appraisers you said, hey, I've been measuring ANSI standards for years, and you find out, maybe not.
Yeah, and truthfully, I mean, the amount of people taking classes has been awesome. So I got to give appraisers credit. You know, they're trying to learn this stuff. And ever since this announcement came out, my phone, my email, and text and everything else, I'm getting a lot of pictures, you know, a lot of sketches, a lot of questions. Yeah. So, you know, and I enjoy doing that stuff. And there's a lot of things, you know, that ANSI does cover, and there's a lot of things it doesn't cover. So this is kind of going to be a learning process. But the main thing, there's nothing to be afraid of with ANSI. You know, the ANSI police are not going to show up at your house. Nobody, because you're 2 inches different from somebody else, they're not going to turn you over to the appraisal board. You know, it's really not that big of a deal, nothing to be afraid of. And there are a few things, though, that people need to learn. And probably one of the biggest things is about the disclosure statement. Okay. You know, people love to do one-line disclosures. That doesn't work.
Let's talk about that, because one of the questions I want to ask you is, what are the 2 to 3 items that you see that appraisers think they know, but they don't really when it comes to ANSI standard? Those that are putting, this wouldn't be me, of course, putting that I measured ANSI standards, but yet you find out they're not. One of them is the disclosure statement. Let's talk about that. What is that, and what does that mean?
Yeah, and most of the time people will put, you know, I follow the ANSI standard, or sketch for illustration only. And if you read ANSI, I'm not sure why this is so important, but the rule, if you physically measure the house, the rule of rounding they want in the report. And one thing I will tell you that we're working on right now, within the next week, if people will go to appraiserelearning.com, there's going to be several examples of disclosures. You know, and there's just examples so people can write their own, but there's going to, you know, I've had so many people ask about that. I decided it'd just be easier to put them up and let people look at that, because that is going to be one of the biggest changes.
If you don't mind me interrupting him on that one issue, because I've been asked this question several times, and I think there's maybe a myth out there that maybe you can help dispel, because what I've heard is that there is one ANSI standard, a disclosure statement, and it has to be word for word in every report, other than, you know, the parts that change, the square footage up and down, that kind of thing. You're saying no, there just needs to be a disclosure statement, and you're going to give some examples at elearning.com.
Exactly. I mean, there's no, you know, one line or one size fits all. You know, they give some examples in ANSI, but there's certain rules that you have to follow, and then they give some recommendations, you know, if you really want to get technical. But I've been trying to break it down so that people can do it all on their sketch. You know, you don't have to make another disclosure statement. You know, you can put it as complicated as you want, but you can do everything right in your sketch, you know, so you have the information, you know, it's a saved item. You add it, you know, about the rule of rounding, and disclosure shouldn't be a big item.
Perfect. I misspoke earlier. I said elearning.com. I meant appraiserelearning.com, of course. Great friends over there in the Tennessee area. But you know, that's one thing, the disclosure statement. What are some other things that you see that that the typical appraiser might be doing that should be probably corrected before April 1?
Yeah, and one of the things we're probably getting as many questions about as anything is ceiling heights. You know, when they tell you they want you to measure per ANSI standards, and the ceiling upstairs is under 7 feet, you know, there's going to be a lot of issues with older homes, you know, in the market. People, you know, in MLS and the buyers and sellers, they're including that space, you know, in the GLA. And according to ANSI, it's not. And Fannie Mae has specific way they want you to do that. In the grid, they want you to measure it and list it according to ANSI, and then make a separate item at the bottom of the grid for that space that's under 7 feet. And that's going to be one of the biggest things that we have to work out.
Yeah, and especially if it's been misreported in the past, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's going to be something that Fannie Mae is going to have to work on. And one great resource, if you go to Fannie Mae, you know, they're putting out FAQs and updating these frequently asked questions. So, when there's a question, go straight to the source. So as we get going in this, that's going to be a great resource just to go to Fannie Mae's website.
Very good. Very good. What else are you seeing? Stairways come up quite a bit. How do we do a stairway?
Yeah, stairways. And actually, to me, stairways are really simple. Is it double dipping? In my opinion, it is double dipping.
Yeah.
However, that's the rule of ANSI. You count the stairs on the bottom floor, you raise them up, and you count them on the top floor.
Yep. Yeah. I've heard it explained. Tell me if this is wrong. For ANSI, if you took the stairway and you hooked a chain to the bottom stair and lifted that thing up so that it met, the top of the second floor, you measure that floor, you measure what was underneath before you lifted it up. It really is double dipping, because who in the world lives unless you're Harry Potter,
It is. I hadn't heard the one about the chain. I love that. I'm going to use that. I'll borrow it. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So tell me, somebody like myself who feels like, I think I probably measure pretty close to ANSI. I don't know. I mean, I've been measuring the nearest half foot. There's another myth, right? ANSI is not to the nearest half foot.
You definitely cannot do that anymore. That's a no-no.
Yeah. So somebody like me who I know how to measure a home, right? Maybe there's a couple things I need to tweak. Maybe I need to do a little bit better on my stairways, or, is it really truly 7 feet upstairs, or, am I going to the nearest tenth of a foot or nearest inch? There's some things I need to tweak, but how serious let's put it this way, Hamp, for somebody who's where I am, feels like I do a pretty good job. How long is it going to take me to really get up to speed?
Not long. I mean,
good,
truthfully,
good. I like that.
I mean, I always say, first thing you do is make sure you got a copy of ANSI.
Yeah.
You ought to have that so you can explain it to other people if they've got a question. But I mean, most of us that have been doing this for a long time, you already know this stuff. There's nothing in ANSI that's really going to jump out and shock you. You're probably already following 98 or 99% of it. There's just a few things, like the disclosures and like how to report those slope ceilings like that and the low ceiling heights. But I mean, really, it's just not that big of a deal. There's nothing to be afraid of. You already know this stuff.
We already mentioned your book. I'll mention it again, Measuring Square Footage with ANSI 2021 Home Measuring Textbook. Hamp, what other resources out there would you like to kind of share with the listeners? If somebody wanted to get up to speed, number one, start with that book, go to Amazon.com, or maybe you have a better resource to get the book. But to share with us some resources that we might take advantage of here.
Yeah, and of course, for me, Amazon's as easy as anything to find that book. And, I've had the book, How to Measure a House, for a long time, and really just updated it to have all those 7 changes of ANSI 2021, put the things about disclosures in there. So you've got that book. And I just finished a new 7-hour online class and virtual class, a new 4-hour online class. I'm updating a 5-hour video class, and we're working on a mini series, like hour-long classes on basements and slope ceilings and whatever you can think of. But the Appraisal Institute, McKissick, Melissa Bond, and lots of local people are doing classes on ANSI. So chances are where you live, there's somebody doing a class. There's also the Appraiser e-learning roadshow. That Brian Reynolds had this idea about a roadshow, and it kind of took off in certain areas. So they've been doing really good with that. But there's a lot of good resources out there right now. Search ANSI.
Yeah. And let's just pin down. You talk about this 4-hour class, 7-hour class. Are those found at Appraiser e-learning? If somebody wanted to take that class from you?
Yeah, at Appraiser e-learning, we've had ANSI classes for years and years, and we've updated all of them. And the classes we have now have been updated, but I've also just completely redone, the 7-hour, 4-hour. Anyway, however you want to learn it, whether it's an online class, a virtual class, a full video measuring class, anything that you want to learn about ANSI, you definitely can find on appraiserelearning.com.
Well, let's put it this way, whether you want to or not, you should. So
yeah, I mean, it's really a good idea. And I mean, most time for those, if you take a 4-hour class, you really get the meat and potatoes of ANSI. And right now, with all that's going on, it would be better to have that now than to wait 3 months and get it after the fact. So yeah, I'd advise, whether you like to take it live or whatever, whether you do it local or online, it really is a good idea to get a class on it now.
His name is Hamp Thomas. He is the author of Measuring Square Footage with ANSI 2021 Home Measuring Textbook. Hamp, thank you, my friend.
Glad to be here. Glad to see your face. I hope to talk to you again.
You've been listening to the Appraiser Coach podcast with Dustin Harris. If you like what you hear, please give us a 5-star rating and post a short review on iTunes. For more in-depth insider information on how you can make more money as a real estate appraiser, visit theappraisercoach.com and sign up for the All-Star team today. Thanks for joining us. And now, get out there and create some value.